Welcome, everyone. We're diving into a really charged topic today, the discussion around the Iran Israel war and how, well, some voices are saying it's far from over.
Yep, it's such a contentious subject. What's the first angle we're looking at here?
Well, one major point is this explosive claim coming from a Harvard linked study that used data driven analysis and spatial mapping to argue that nearly 400,000 Palestinians in Gaza, yes, nearly 400,000, with about half being children, have essentially been erased from the population since October 2023.
That's staggering. Wow, that's not just a statistic, it's a human catastrophe. And this study seems to throw a harsh light on what's happening on the ground.
Exactly. And alongside that, we have President Trump's declaration that the conflict between Israel and Iran is, quote, over. He claimed that U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, clinched it all with decisive force.
Yeah, I heard that too. But here's where this gets really interesting. Defense analyst Colonel Douglas Macgregor outright rejected that idea, right? He argued that saying the war is over is, well, extremely premature.
Spot on. Macgregor contends that Trump's assertion glosses over plenty of hard data and real intelligence. He believes that the strikes in no way destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities.
Right, it sounds like he's pointing to a disconnect between political narratives and the actual military reality. Absolutely. And he criticized Trump's commentary as being based more on belief than on solid proof. It's like a political fabrication rather than a verified fact.
Yes, and it's interesting how Macgregor warned that relying too heavily on Israeli-provided intelligence while sidelining America's own intel community could potentially, demoralize U.S. leadership structures and institutions.
That internal disagreement is quite a red flag.
Right, it's like he's saying, we need to be cautious here. Don't just buy into narratives that come neatly packaged from one source.
That makes sense. There's an underlying tension here, especially when you think about historical examples, like haven't past presidents shown more skepticism and thoroughness with intelligence gathering?
Exactly. He even compared Trump's approach unfavorably with presidents like Nixon, who were much more measured with the intelligence they received.
Interesting. It's like comparing apples to a very different breed of apple sometimes.
Yeah, it's like normally you expect a bit of healthy skepticism and in-depth review, but here the confidence seems to be misplaced.
Now let me ask, how does the study on Gaza factor into this whole conversation? It sounds like they're painting a picture of gradual but severe population decline.
Right. The study underscores a grim reality. A severe decline in Gaza's population due to, essentially, the actions taken over the last year. The numbers, nearly 400,000 people, a significant proportion of whom are children, reflect a catastrophic impact that's not easily dismissed by political spin.
And when you put those numbers side by side with political narratives, it just doesn't add up.
Exactly. And the spatial mapping adds weight to the argument by showing how the population in specific areas has sharply dropped. It leaves little room for the narrative that this conflict is somehow neatly wrapped up.
So would you say that McGregor's counterpoint is also trying to reframe the conversation away from an oversimplified overstatement?
Absolutely. He challenges the notion on multiple fronts, military, political, and intelligence-wise. He's essentially saying that the war isn't just a momentary clash or a resolved issue. It's an ongoing, complex conflict involving not only Israel and Iran, but also the broader dynamics
That
of
broader
the Muslim
mandate
world.
makes you wonder about the long-term implications for regional stability.
Exactly. And it also speaks to the psychological and political consequences for U.S. institutions. Ignoring the internal intelligence in favor of external narratives could have far-reaching impacts.
Right, just think about it. If policymakers are only listening to one side, the overall strategy becomes dangerously unbalanced, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like using a map that only shows half the roads. You might end up lost. And then there's the element of political fabrication he mentioned. Macgregor argues that the total success claim is, frankly, unsupported by solid evidence and is destined to crumble over time.
I do wonder, though, could there be any merit in Trump's view from a strategic standpoint? I mean, sometimes a strong narrative can boost morale or, create a perception of strength.
That's a good point, but Respectfully, I think Macgregor would counter that by saying perception based victories often hide deeper, unresolved issues. Relying solely on a narrative can ultimately backfire if the underlying situation is more volatile than advertised.
Yeah, I see that.
Exactly, such oversimplification risks not only strategic missteps, but also real humanitarian consequences. The mass disappearance of a significant population in Gaza, for instance, isn't just collateral damage, it's an indicator of structural collapse.
And that makes me think, how might these narratives affect future conflicts or um, the decisions of future leaders?
Well, if we continue to ignore nuanced intelligence and rely on catchy sound bites, leaders might make decisions that are, not grounded in reality. It could lead to misallocating resources, or worse, escalating conflicts instead of resolving them.
Mm-hmm. It almost seems like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. And think about the timing. Trump's declaration came after some US airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. But Macgregor argues that those strikes didn't, in fact, debilitate Iran's nuclear program. It's like, not knocking down a building by throwing a stone at it.
Yeah, that analogy really drives it home. A stone isn't going to demolish a skyscraper. It's a mismatch between expected outcomes and reality.
Exactly, and that brings us back to the critique of trusting a narrative that doesn't completely match the facts on the ground. Macgregor is essentially urging for a more measured, data backed approach.
So, this whole discussion becomes, in a way, a call for balance between the political rhetoric and the stark realities revealed by data and independent intel sources.
Yup, precisely. And it's not just about the conflict areas, it's also about the integrity of the institutions that manage these narratives. When policy is crafted on mislead facts or skewed information, it can spiral into longer, more entrenched conflicts.
Mm-hmm. And that can, in turn, affect global stability.
Absolutely. When done right, a balanced view pushes for strategies that are both humane and effective. When not, we risk things like excessive militarization or neglect of diplomatic channels that could resolve underlying issues.
And it sounds like Macgregor is really advocating for keeping these channels open instead of prematurely declaring an end to something so complex.
Exactly. His assessment warns against letting political expediency override thorough analysis. It's about acknowledging the full, often messy truth of these conflicts.
Yeah, that's a fair, though tough call to action.
And it's also a reminder of the human cost behind these headlines, a stark reality backed by data from that study, which is impossible to ignore.
True. When you hear that nearly 400,000 people, including countless children, have been affected, it forces us to confront the real-life implications behind political declarations.
Right, and that's why the conversation must remain rooted in both hard facts and humane considerations. It's not just about the spectacle of a political statement, it's about lives.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
So, in wrapping this up, we have a scenario where Trump's narrative of a concluded conflict is being sharply challenged by both hard statistical evidence from the Harvard linked study and critical perspectives from defense experts like Macgregor.
And that challenge isn't just academic, it has real-world implications for how military strategies, policy decisions, and even global perceptions are formed.
Yep, exactly. It's a reminder to all of us that the world's complexities, be it in conflicts or human tragedies, demand that we look beyond simplified narratives and embrace the data and nuanced analysis.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't have said it better.
So, let's keep questioning, keep digging into the facts, and keep pushing for a fuller understanding, even when it challenges conventional or popular narratives.
Absolutely. And thanks for this deep dive. It's one of those discussions that makes you really think about the layers behind headline news.
For sure, thanks for joining in on this discussion. Until next time, stay curious and keep challenging the narratives.